This is Brenny Larson with Dr. Feng Shui, Yasha Jampolsky. We are on part 2, and we are going to do Suzanne Rollins' chart now. Yasha, take it away.
Suzanne Rollins. So, as we mentioned before, in the first part of the program, and I strongly urge everybody to see the first part if you haven't seen it. A lot of information about 4 pillars, and the 5 elements are part of the keystones of 4 pillars. The elements are just as important as the animals that appear in the chart, and just by looking at the elemental balance in someone's chart, we can determine a lot of information. So here we're dealing with someone who has a yin fire day master, and it's a weak chart. So right away, if it's a weak chart, we look at fire and we see it's 10%. And, this is a place where we could add more fire. There's quite a bit of wood, which is a resource. So I would really start here. If I were going to add one element, it would be fire. And what I would do is, the way that I like to add elements, I have a few different ways that I like to do it. Either using feng shui cures, and the nice thing about that is they're very adaptable, and there's so many of them. You can add, and that includes the colors, it includes the actual elements, it includes objects that represent the elements. The other way that I really like to add the element is through an activity that is part of that elemental group. And fire is all about getting out in front of people. It's all about displaying and sharing and so on. So I would, if Suzanne were here and I could communicate with her, I would tell her, how do you feel about doing public speaking?
She would never do public speaking.
What's that?
She would never, she's shy. She would never do public speaking.
So this is an area where she might want to, push herself out of her comfort zone.
Okay, so can I ask you a question? Because this is a student of mine and I know her well. So she's not at that age where she's going to want to go get a job and do public speaking. So she's in the more, I've experienced life mode. So what would you suggest? Getting involved in a group of some sort then instead? Because
public speaking doesn't have to be a big deal. It could be join some kind of a common interest group and make it a habit to speak to them about something that you're interested in. And that could be public speaking. The other things that relate to fire activities would be musical performances, or I don't know. I would ask her if she plays an instrument, and then I would encourage her to play in front of people, not necessarily in a formal setting, but when friends are over, take out the instrument and play for them. If she did. Yes?
If she didn't play an instrument, what about if she played lots of music? Like, I don't play an instrument, but I love, and I've zero fire in my chart.
Music is actually very good for, depending on the kind of music, it would have to be upbeat, kind of fiery music. Salsa music is wonderful for fire. But it could also be, other things, if she's older and, if she's interested, let's say, in poetry, she might do a poetry reading. And it's just as, and we can start by doing it if people are shy, because often that's a lifelong thing, and at a certain age it might be difficult to change. You can do just read out loud, or sing out loud. Sing in the shower really loud. That's a fire activity.
I have a question. You said about poetry reading. Well, reading to me would be a water, because it's communicating.
Yes, it would.
So by doing that, is she kind of helping both those elements, which would seem crazy because they're, across?
Yeah, they're kind of opposed elements. Well, we really want to, even though her water element is on the low side, that's not really how we balance the charts. We go for increasing her self element.
Right, and because her day master is yin fire, that's why he is saying the element is fire for her.
Right, but it's also the fact that if you look at the number at the top, and if you remember from the last time I talked about it, This is a numerical quantity that's determined using a formula. And this reads as a week chart. And what we want to do with the normally week chart is to increase it as much as we can.
Okay, so I need clarification there myself. So it can be it could be yin fire week chart, but you could have 40% fire. It does nothing to do with the percentage. Is that correct?
Yes.
You're saying that when you add all those numbers up, when I look at my chart, because I'm a number person, so of course I added everything up everywhere.
If for example, if you had 40% fire, and then 40% earth, and then another 20% water, and let's forget about the other two for now, you would have a weak fire chart.
Okay.
Even with 40%.
I get you.
So in this particular case, the fire is weak, and the earth is so large that it's drawing off the chi from the fire even more.
Right.
And then you've got metal, which will take more chi from the fire because fire controls metal. And then you have water, which is the controlling element of fire. So there's enough there to seriously weaken the chart. So our step one would be to increase wood and fire. So the third way that I like to increase it is by having people who are representative of the element that is needed. So I would have her, connect with fire people. I mean, I wouldn't have her do anything. I would recommend that she associate with fire people, and she work with fire. There are people at work that sort of. And how do we do it? We look at if we don't have a 4 pillars chart for every person that we're dealing with, we look at the descriptions of the elements. So if she's fire, and if you scroll down one page, you have a full description of what a fire chart is. And I would recommend that she associate with people that fit into that category.
Me.
You, exactly.
I'm her teacher, so no wonder she likes showing up for my classes.
That's right. So even though your self element is earth, you come off like a fire person in a lot of ways.
More ways than people want.
And it's kind of interesting, when you think about the idea that these elements they're not real elements. They're metaphors. And they represent a certain dynamic. I knew a pediatrician who became very well known for using 5 elements in diagnosing certain childhood illnesses, especially things like autism, etc. He would sort of figure out what type is that child. He didn't know anything about any of the things that we do. He just knew the description of what a fire child was and what an earth child was and so on, and he would categorize them based on the descriptions. And you know what? It was working really well. He was helping a lot of kids that seemingly no other doctors could help. So we don't want to get too stuck in our disciplines. We want to have the flexibility to understand that these are metaphors. These are all made up, just like feng shui is made up, 4 pillars was made up, and it's only worth what you're able to use it for.
Yeah, to me, just like we talked about in the first webinar, we were talking about the energies of animals. That's exactly how I see the 5 elements, is they all have different types of energies that people can understand. When you do talk about fire, just think of summertime, sparkly in summertime. For me, that I just think of something that would relate to people like that. Water people, for me, I think of just somebody floating on an inner tube, just chilling out, going down the river. So to me, they're energies. And when you understand the energies, like Yasha, you and I know 5 elements so well, that it's the seasons, it's a time of day. I mean, there's everything in many levels on how we can look at it. But fire is, unless it's out, which then it's not fire anymore, it's earth, is always going to be viewed as the most energetic, high activity yang element. So
exactly.
Isn't that how you look at it? They don't have to understand feng shui terms. They just have to understand the energies, just like the animals.
Exactly. We all from an early age learn how to observe people and sort of gauge them and size them up. And this is really no different, except that we're doing it in a kind of an orderly, organized way. but it's not written in stone. So sometimes we can stretch things a little bit if it helps for it to make sense.
You know, and I want to make a point too, is when we went through studies, I don't know if it's just black sect or what, because I don't know all the ins and outs of everybody's certification, but we were given charts and people would take tests, and I had showed Justine one of the books that I use for that, which is based on traditional Chinese medicine, is what it's based on.
Yes.
And that's how you can tell if you're in balance or out of balance. And using myself always as an example, like wood. Well, wood, if you have too much wood, you're going to dry and you're going to snap. Where if you don't have enough, you know, like if you're like a willow tree, you're going to get pushed over. So to me, it's don't just look and go, well, how can I be fired? That's not me. Well, no, it is you, but you're out of balance, you know? Right?
Right.
Ready for the next one, Capitan?
Yes, I am, indeed. Should we go down and look at some of the other aspects of it for everyone else who doesn't really know that much about this? You know, there's a nice description of the fire type, you know, and this is a conglomerate of a lot of reading that I did, and sort of what I did is I wanted to come up with a few simple paragraphs that expressed the general knowledge that's available about fire types, so that it could apply to a lot of people. There's certainly more specific ways to describe them, and there's also a difference between a yin fire type and a yang fire type. And you know, there'll probably be some things like that coming in the future. We'll have to see. So next page.
Of course there will be.
Of course there will be. So these are some of the qualities of fire: activity, vitality. The season for fire is summer, direction is south. The planet is Mars. It's really nice to know that each of the elements has its own planet. Color is red, time of day is high noon, number is 9, the shade is spiky, and compatible occupations, entertainment, restaurant, power resources, public, and motivational speakers. So for Suzanne, if she likes to cook, I would encourage her to do more cooking. And even I would encourage her to do public cooking, which is something that I used to do when I lived in a bigger house than I live in now, and it had a very central kitchen, and I was the cook for the family. So I would do a whole performance I would prepare meals, and people would sit around and watch me cook, and that was so much fun, and taste stuff as it came off the stove. I would encourage Suzanne to do that, whatever way fits into her lifestyle.
Well, you know, now you don't even have to be in front of people, Yasha. You just do live stream.
Yes, that's true.
You do a show on Periscope showing them how to cook something. Like I was going to do kombucha just because I love kombucha, and people were asking me how to kombucha.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so I have a question for you. Is there a specific element that you would say, long as I'm in a declutter coaching program, that I know what I think in my head is right? Is there one element that's going to be more susceptible to clutter?
That's a really interesting question. I would say fire, because they're always so busy moving and stuff. They rarely have time to come back and deal with details.
And see, I would say earth, because they tend to that energy of sitting like a rock and being real grounded.
They tend to collect stuff too.
They tend to collect things. But then I thought about wood, because I'm a wood element and we like to be comfortable, and we like
the thing about wood,
to me, a metal person would be like everything's totally in order in their house, where wood element is like, let me put on my sweats and they're clean, but they may not be perfect in your eyes. Like, I'm not going to iron things, you know? It popped in my head, and I was like, not a metal person, because metal to me are the organized people, and water has to have things flow, so it wouldn't be them.
Right, and wood really is the element of new starts. So, wood people don't like to accumulate stuff. They'd rather use what they have until it's used up, and then
Yep.
get something new.
And we're
So,
always moving things around too.
yeah. So I would say someone who has fire and earth in their chart.
I find it interesting because I want to start trying to kind of look at that, long as we're going to be working together, and we'll get Yasha in front of you. And I've got some plans for those of you that like this kind of stuff and you want to go deeper with Yasha. Got some stuff that we're planning there. And I just thought it would be kind of neat to start looking at the personality types or the archetypes that do have the most clutter, and see if there's any kind of pattern there, because then that helps us. That's one more tool to help us, guys. The more tools in your tool belt, the better. So now we're on the energetic and the
Physiological association.
Yeah. He knows anything that says PHY. I'm just like, whatever. Can't they?
Yeah.
I'm real smart, but some words get me, people.
So it's real. A lot of this comes from Chinese medicine.
It does.
And you know, they really, and there's so much lineage that goes along with any Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, that you know, you don't always know why they include stuff, but I like to include it because if they include it, there's a reason for it.
Well, Yasha, they have a chart with much more on it than this, and the one I left off was meat.
Right.
Because there's vegetarians, and I didn't want to get a ton of emails from people.
No, I know that, but you know what? The world is made of a lot of different people,
But you know, I try to do things because I know my personality and I know my element, so I try to avoid things that get my horns going up. And a lot of emails on something would get.
And you know what? The truth is, there are certain people who would not do well as vegans or vegetarians. Even though I know this is not politically correct, it happens to be a fact that some people need to have meat in their diet. Most of us can adapt, but there are some people who cannot. So I've learned to not, you know, take that stance about it's not good or bad. It is what it is, you know. And yes, we have to do something about the politics of food, because the way that food is, you know, the way food is raised and all of that is so unconscious. But everything done in a conscious way, you know, can be a good thing. And so I tend to not judge, you know. I
gotta make a comment
for myself, but
thank you for that, because I need to make a comment about that, because you know, I'm a person who people always want to make comments on everything. So like, I'm on Facebook and somebody's like, they have this thing about cows, and now they put this thing in them, you know, like a hole in them that has a handle on it, whatever. And I go, well, I guess I got to go back to my soy milk. And he's like, well, it probably has GMOs in it. And it was like everything I said, I was attacked. And it was just like, man, I'm so glad I'm not you, because I believe in the universal laws. I think very much like Abraham Hicks, you know. And it's like, what you think, whether you think you're wrong or think you're right, you are. You know, and you can follow James Allen and all that thought process. I'm not even going to get on my little high horse there. But if you think it's bad, it is. Because that's what you're telling the universe and all of that. Personally, I make a lot of my own stuff. I make my kombucha. I make almond milk. It was just a comment. And I guess why I want to say it is I'm seeing it a lot lately from people. And my master had a saying, and do you answer the door when no one knocks? And what that means is, are you spouting off information and somebody didn't ask you for it?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Don't answer any questions that haven't been asked, you know?
Because that's ego to me.
But, you know,
if you are attacking me, please stop.
Well, you know, Brandy, there's another thing, and I often see this in a 4 pillars chart. There are people who have a lot of trouble feeling themselves unless they are talking or sort of intruding on other people's boundaries. And they do it knowing that they're going to get a negative reaction, but a negative reaction for them is better than
no reaction.
So very often you get that dynamic. And it, you know, it happens a lot on Facebook because, you know, Facebook is such a 3-ring circus sometimes. You know, as wonderful as it can be, you know, you get a lot of all kinds of people there, you know, so
It's just like when we do live streams, you never know. We call them trolls, who's going to show up and you block them. I think what I'm just hearing download in my head is do not misuse this information Yasha's giving you and the charts that I've given you, like when he's covering over this. If you haven't studied with him or studied with a feng shui person, it's okay to share information, but please don't act like you're a practitioner, because you can see Yasha's been doing this for years and years and years, and it takes a long time to get good at this. And just like we tell you in feng shui, please be aware of what you're doing. Don't go teach a class because you read a book, because you can hurt it more than help it. So I think maybe that's where it came from. I'm not sure. The download was very strong. So if you have questions, that's what we're for. You show up for our live calls. You go to our Facebook groups and you ask questions there, because if you have a question, everybody else has a question. And if you want to work further, Yasha's going to be, getting some classes together and certifications and stuff. So just honor the information, I guess, is where I want to go with that.
Okay, sounds good.
Are you done with this one?
Myself, I will follow that advice.
Yeah, Yasha, don't be just going off and giving everybody a bunch of information. Okay, so we covered, this is fire, guys, just a little bit. The yin organ, if you're looking at the charts that you follow with me also, exact same information.
Cool.
Kind of common sense, really, when you get into 5 elements and you start looking at it. Like, look at their temperament. Their emotions are up and down, but the overall energy, emotion is joy, which to me, fire, sparkly south. You think of summertime, at least us in the north, it's like, yay, the sun.
This is why fire people are so much fun to be around. Ultimately, that is really, there may be some things blocking, and you may not see their joyful side, but ultimately, fire is the energy of joy, and it's quite captivating.
Here we have Margot.
Margot. So
She's from Canada. She's from Canada.
Margot is another water chart. She's a very weak. She's a weak water chart in water, and and again, if you notice, she's at 29% water, and she's still a weak water chart. Why do you think that is, Brenny?
Well, it looks to me like there's some other elements that may be playing havoc with her.
Yes, just a few.
Well, metal, she has very little metal, so let me see.
Very little resource.
Guys, see how he put that on there? And it's different for everyone. Can you explain what is your expression, and, so they understand when they look at these charts, they're not always going to be fire as well.
And these are chosen words, by the way. Essentially, this is really the 5 element system at its best. Water is out of water, wood is born. So wood is the expression of water. Very often, by seeing how much expression element is in the chart, you can determine how many children that person is going to have. Maybe not the actual number, but you can determine if this is someone that will have a lot of children or few children. And wealth element is usually the element that the self element controls. So water is a control element for fire. That makes it the wealth element in this chart. Okay, this is not to say that fire is always a wealth element.
Right.
Fire is a wealth element in this chart. Resource is self-explanatory. Water is born from metal, and resource is the element that is most supportive of the self element in this particular chart. Power is the element that controls the self element. So earth is a control element for water, so earth becomes power.
Okay. Don't worry, people, if you aren't into feng shui and you really are not understanding all this information, that you could do it yourself, don't worry about it, because that's what Yasha's for. That's what all these feng shui people do, especially his expertise. So don't worry if you're really interested in this. At the end, we're going to have an offer for you where he will sit down, he'll do your chart and explain it to you. So I don't want anyone stressing out. I don't do these charts myself. I wouldn't know how to get the percentages. I know how to explain it and understand it once the chart's done.
Great.
Okay, ready for the next slide?
Yes, ma'am. So water, again, we reviewed water in the first part of this program. And, you know, water is a I like water. There's things about water that I like a lot. You know, it's a nourishing influence. And there's a couple of important things to know about water people. Very often, it's hard to tell what's going on with them because a lot of what goes on is below the surface.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, which I mentioned in the last time we looked at water, is that water cannot be stopped. You can put obstacles in the way of water, but water will ultimately always find its way around the obstacles and back to the ocean. You know, it's like if you think about the cycles of water, you know, the water evaporates out of the ocean, it flows as clouds over the land, and it rains everywhere, whether it's in the mountains or it's on the prairies or whatever, and then it forms little rivulets which eventually become larger rivers and so on. And that's sort of the compelling and unstoppable energy of water. You know, people don't realize how powerful water people are because they're, you know, there's something very gentle and emotional about their qualities. But, you know, when they put their minds to something, they're unstoppable. And you know, it's something to be aware of when you're dealing with water people, because sometimes you may try to push a water person around or to see your way of doing things or doing it your way instead of their way, but ultimately they will find a way to do it exactly how they want. The other thing that I mentioned earlier was about the strong connection with emotions. Water is the master of emotions. People who have have water as a self element or quite a bit in their chart, they're very comfortable with emotions, and they can use emotions to they're usually very clear and they understand their own feelings really well, and through that they're able to understand other people's feelings better than most of the other signs. And out of this comes an ability to persuade people using emotional arguments. You know, if you were dealing with a metal person, they would be extremely logical and almost, you know, dogmatic in the way they would explain things. You know, the water person would kind of weave around the argument and would continue explaining this and explaining that and looking at the ups and the downs. And then eventually, before you know it, you'd be convinced of what they were saying, because that's the nature of water. So these are some of the wonderful qualities of water.
And I like
Yes?
one of the visuals for water when you say that there's a large part of their process that takes place under the surface. I always just think of the duck, you know, that looks like it's just calm, but underneath those little legs are just.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, I see that. And I really like that you put because of water's ability to get into every nook and cranny.
That's right.
Because what does water do, guys? Like when he said water, I think of like those tsunamis and things. They come in and they take everything out in front of them, and then it always recedes back to the ocean.
And if you ever notice, it's kind of interesting to observe the different types within a group. If you ever see a water person coming into a group, before you know it, they have talked to almost every single person in that group, you know, and in some cases, they not only talk to them, but they become best friends.
They just kind of flow through the crowd, don't they?
Yeah.
I want to go back and look at her chart just for a minute.
Sure.
So if you gave Margot like one thing she could do for her chart, what would you suggest? Because we kind of went over her quick.
Yes. Well, I would definitely add metal. That would be my first choice. You know, and what I would say is...
And this is why I think, and you tell me if I'm right, because I like... Okay, because that is the mother of water, and water is her day element, and it's already weak. So to add metal, that's adding energy of the metal itself, but it's also going to add to water?
Yes. So quantitatively, she has lots of water. And what energetically is really where she needs to boost her water. And metal is really the key thing. And my guess would be if Margot was here, and I would say she would be the sort of person that's very self-reliant and also ends up taking care of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And what she really needs to have more of is a support structure, and that would be in the form of metal. So I would have her associate with metal people. I would have her wear metal jewelry, particularly silver is good, you know, and
Grays and whites.
water. What's that?
And wear grays and whites.
Yes, yes, exactly. Grays and whites.
She has they own a ice cream shop, which I still want my ice cream from Canada. And she is a out of her home, people come and she does all that pretty stuff like waxing and blah 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 blah, that
Right.
kind of stuff, aromatherapy. And
Beautician, yeah.
yeah, she does lots of aromatherapy. Is aromatherapy earth then because they come, or is it wood because they come from plants?
You know, it really, you know, the funny thing about aromatherapy, on its own, it's not any one of the elements, but the different oils represent the elements. So you know, and I could be wrong. I mean, this is just my perspective because I used to do a lot of aromatherapy and feng shui.
I use a lot of it, and I'm actually going to do a class with her on aromatherapy. But my thing is, what would aromatherapy be in her chart that she would be so drawn? Or is it more the earth element of helping out?
Aromatherapy could be metal, you know, as a practice. And maybe wood too. I don't know. You know, it's hard for me to gauge because I'm so connected to the individual oils and which ones are
Right.
which elements.
And yes, guys, there's going to be a call on that.
That would be a really good call to sort
Yeah,
of.
I got that one all outlined with all the elements, so you understand by the Bagua, which if you understand the Bagua and the elements, and then there'll be a lot more to a class on it. But okay, I was just curious because I know her, so I'm trying to apply what you're saying about these people. And we already went through the qualities of water, and also on the replay page is the 5 elemental handout chart, which has all of these fun things in it that we've covered before.
And you know, we out of the 4 people case studies we looked at, we have 2 that are water and 2 that are fire. So we didn't get to cover a lot of the elements in this particular.
Now, this guy's personality is sparkling fire. His energy is fire. He is a positive, motivated, hard worker. And
Starter.
talk about his chart, and then I'm so excited for this chart for him because he's an awesome individual with a very big, kind heart. I'll just tell you, Yasha, he's on a mission because he tells everyone. He just came back from the Philippines. He's on a mission to employ 1 million Filipinos. He has a virtual assistant agency. He's on a big mission, especially with you awakened entrepreneurs, to assist you to get your mission out to the world by assisting Filipinos, because it's like $1 to, I don't even know, $20 down there to help those women live a good life. So that right there, that earth part I see, and then I see his fire part too. So take it away. I'm really excited about this chart.
So what would you guess, Brent? Do you think he's going to succeed?
He's going to for sure succeed.
Absolutely.
And he has a good, I'm noticing all the time, like when he does live streams or anything, his mom shows up or his aunt. He has a very good, lots of family friends that show up for him.
That's wonderful. So as you can see, he's predominantly fire and earth. So fire is this ability to sparkle and be in front of people, and he's very charismatic. And earth is that ability, you know, earth is the element of transformation, I've said before. So he has a tremendous ability to change things, you know. So what I would do is, he's a mid-range fire. So if I were to add one thing, I would add probably some wood elements. You know, I wouldn't want to add more fire element because it would be a little out of balance. But you could add some wood element to it, because when you take on big things like that, you really do need the support of your resource. You know,
Question.
and
I'm going to be doing joint venture. We're going to be doing Wednesday shows on social media and how to run your business, that kind of techie aspect of things. So I'm a wood element. So are you saying that that would be, I'm a good match for him? Or you?
Absolutely. That's what he needs.
Yay. Because he helps me in my chart with 0 fire.
Yes. That's right. He's the fire that you need, and you're the wood that he needs.
I'm going to give you, it sounds like a bad country western song.
Yeah, and all you need is your dog and your pickup truck, and you're all set.
Yeehaw!
Yeehaw!
I'm going to give you my percentages, because long as we're doing charts, and we'll continue on with his too, but what this is about is so you can understand how people work together, and why it's great to understand this. Not, you know, for me, it helped me personally understand why I am the way I am. But
by the way, Brenny, for a while I was very interested in doing corporate work, and I would do consulting with certain corporations, and they would have me come in, and I would say, okay, get all your directors in one place, and I want to see how they naturally sit, and then I want to rearrange the seating. And very often, you know, this was no surprise to me, people sat exactly next to the people they should be sitting next to.
mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, you would get some really weird combinations, which after I did everybody's charts and rearranged the seating, made a big difference. I had a friend who was, we did a lot of consulting, a different type of consulting, and she would bring me in to rearrange the seating in the boardroom, and it made such a difference for the ones that were pretty much in balance. It didn't change it that much, but for the ones that were mismatched, it made such a huge difference.
Well, you know that I have a plan with you anyway in a coaching program. So look forward to that in the future, guys, where you're going to get like 4 or 5 coaches, and we're going to take you. Yasha's an important part of it, because how can you run a business when you don't know who you are, and you don't know why you act the way you act, and then you beat yourself up because you were either Catholic or your family does it to you, or the universe does it to you all the time.
Well, I want to modify that statement just slightly, Brenny. I think people know who they are. It's usually 1 or 2 things about themselves that represent resistance in their life.
Well, I don't agree with that, because I didn't realize I was 70% earth. If you would have asked me,
Okay,
I would have said
I'll take it.
I would have said I was
Okay.
fire.
All right, Brenny. I'm not going to look at a gift compliment in the mouth.
No, but I mean, that's how I would have looked at it for me, is I would go, I'm not 70% earth. Yeah, I like the outdoors, but what about this charming personality and this energy that's pinging off the... So for me, honestly, Yasha, because you know my family and you know my chart, it really helped me have confidence in myself, because I understood why I do the things I do. I understood why I have a big, bold personality. I'm a thunder trigram. It helped me understand why I would snap. I had too much wood. I needed to get near the water. I was drinking coffee with sugar in it and going out partying, and, you know. So for me, it totally helped me understand me and quit beating myself up all the time, because, you know, if anyone has been Catholic, you understand the guilt. And it's like, that is a hard thing to break sometimes, at least.
Absolutely.
It has been a challenge for me, that, and I think it is for everyone. It's easy to beat yourself up, right?
Sometimes we do. And it's better if we can find ways to change without beating ourselves up.
Well, that is our goal and our dream, and that is what we are, blessings that we are working with right here, that God's given us, or the universe gave us these gifts of understanding, or at least Yasha. At least there's somebody getting this.
So, Brenny, on that note, I need to wrap things up just because the time is running late.
Okay, let's just quick go through this. So, is there anything he needs to do with metal or water?
You know, I would I would prefer before I made a judgment like that to discuss it with the person. There's certain specific things I would ask, you know, and see if there's any place in their life where I look just from looking at the chart. I would say don't mess with it. I'd say you know, wood is what he needs. The other two, or he's fine with it the way that it is. And this is probably someone who is not that interested in his own profit, but because of the way that he's constructed, ultimately he will receive a lot of money. A lot of money will come his way, but it'll come indirectly because it's not one of his primary interests. I think everything else that he seems to be involved in is what he really cares about.
That's exactly it. So we went through basically what this is, and I'm going to send a link out. I'll also post it. Let me see. Facebook kind of is not as fun. It's going to be on the replay page, which you're watching right now. But once again, I'll give you the link. brennyscopes.com/Yasha replay. And on that page is also a button where you can just click, and it's going to take you, if you're interested in getting your chart done. And Yasha, explain to them when you do a chart, you don't just like send it to them and say, there's your percentages. You actually go over it with them, right?
Yeah, well, usually, along with all the paperwork and you will get a lot of paperwork, it's a 1 hour phone consultation. And basically, I'm pretty generous with that hour. Some people need a little bit extra time because they may be having some kind of challenge in their life. And I'm happy to, you know, my goal is really in every single consultation, find one thing that could be life-changing for that person. And most of the time I have to say I've met that goal. And sometimes it's surprising what it is, you know, but usually there's always one thing that ends up being life-changing. As you learned, Brenny, when I revealed some of the aspects of your chart and you started to see yourself in a completely different light. And you know, and the key to it is that sometimes a shift in perspective can make all the difference. And Four Pillars offers a view from a completely different perspective than we normally look at our personal lives. And it'll give you insights, and it'll give you, you know, it'll answer questions. Should I do this? Or should I do that? Should I be with that person or this person? Should I keep that job? Right now, I have a client that I did a chart for. She's changing careers, and I'm helping counsel her on how to find the best possible job. She's got a few job offers, and she doesn't know which one to go with. I was able to, you know, give her some insights as to, first of all, the best way to present herself in an interview, but also which would be the job that would be the happiest for her. And so there's a lot of things that this can do, and I recommend that everyone experience it at least once.
So this special offer is going to be up till Sunday. Then it goes right back up. You can get the Four Pillars life reading anytime you want. It's $400. But because Yasha loves me and loves my students and we're on the same mission together, he's going to do this all for $247. So all you have to do is go to pillars horoscope.com. Do you remember the / what it is, Yash?
For the link for that?
Yeah, I don't have the link.
I don't remember it, but it's kind of a complicated one, like all these things usually are.
Yeah, we're just, as you know, we're recording on a different system because everything has been a technological gremlin today, but we don't care. We just go past that.
Yeah, and also, I wanted to also mention that as a special gift, everybody who orders this life reading will also get my book, Easy Steps to 8 Mansions, which is a primer for Compass Feng Shui. And in there, it has tons of information about Minghua and the Bazai methods. And it also has a printout. It gives you the ability to print out these beautiful full color charts, so that you can do them for yourself and hang them on your wall. Charts of your personal Minghua and charts of the Bazai of your home or room, etc. If you happen to be a Feng Shui consultant, you can do this and print these out for your clients.
Wow.
And I developed a lot of these things for myself in my own practice. And eventually people were asking me, hey, how can I print that out? That's so nice. And how, and then they wanted explanations. So I created the book. So even for people who have not studied compass feng shui, this book is easy to follow. That's why I call it Easy Steps. Everything is very clear, baby steps so that everybody can understand it. And you can have a lot of fun with that book.
Yasha, to print that out for your clients, that really makes you look professional, I'll tell you that, because they're beautiful.
Absolutely.
That's a big step in credibility right there. He's not selling this anymore. He used to sell it, but now, it's included in this, but he's not selling it individually. So I highly recommend you get that special offer. Once again, the email will go out, the push will go out, the link will be on the replay page. So if you have questions, we're on Facebook. You can find me all over the place, people. Please let me know if you have questions. And yes, we will be doing more training with Yasha, so don't worry about that. But do go get that chart, because in the next trainings, you'll have your chart in front of you and you can follow along like I do. Thanks, Yasha. As always, it's a pleasure interviewing you. And like we said, we could just do this all day long like we're having coffee, because that's how we feel.
We almost did today.
Yeah, it has been an all-day event, and he's met some of my students.
Anytime, Brady. Pleasure's all mine.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much. And we'll be talking soon.
Okie dokie. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.